Hey, you all, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to the No-Till Market Garden Podcast, episode 18, season 2. Such a great episode for you all this week with Maude-Hélène Desroches of Les Jardins de Grelinette in Quebec. If that farm sounds familiar, it's because this is the farm that Maude-Hélène started with J.M. Fortier, and it's featured in the Market Gardener book. And I have to say, this is one of my favorite farms I've ever visited. It is exactly what I want in a farm. It's incredibly compact, but also really comfortable. It feels just like a home. It's an easy place to relax for such an intensive production farm. And we talk about the intention behind that. We also get to hear Maude-Hélène's story, how she came into farming, what the early years were like with kids and how they managed that. And we talk about what's changed at Grelinette since she took over. Hannah and I are huge fans of this farm and Maude-Hélène. So this was just an honor to do. So it's a really great conversation, and I could not bring it to you without the help of our show sponsors. So today's show is generously supported by BCS America.
BCS two-wheel tractors are often referred to as the best tiller on earth, which makes sense given that the rear-tine tiller is our most popular attachment. Recently, a growing number of folks have begun to see till as a dirty word. No-till and low-till methods certainly have their benefits, but the BCS tiller attachment has a new trick up its sleeve for growers that are concerned with inverting soil layers or over-pulverizing their soil. The Precision Depth Roller accessory, or PDR, is now available for 30-inch BCS tillers, and a 26-inch version will be available in early 2020. The PDR gives BCS owners precise control over the depth at which they engage their soil, from half an inch up to 7 inches deep in half-inch increments. Perfect for mixing in soil amendments while chopping up any leftover plant residues. And the PDR's expanded mesh roller gently levels the soil, leaving behind a perfect seedbed. The PDR is on sale now. Check out bcsamerica.com for sale pricing and to find your nearest dealer.
Today's show is also brought to you by Dr. Elaine Ingham's Soil Food Web School.
Hello, everyone. This is Keisha from the Soil Food Web School. I want to tell you all about the brand new courses that Dr. Elaine Ingham has just launched. She spent the last 4 decades pioneering research on how plants and microbes work together to build healthy soil. Dr. Ingham is considered by many to be the world's foremost soil biologist. She's helped farmers around the world to optimize their soil biology, to reduce their chemical inputs, while simultaneously increasing their yields and profits. I've personally trained with Dr. Ingham, and now I run a successful business making compost and helping farmers to improve the life in their soil. The all-new Soil Food Web Foundation courses are being launched on December 20th, and there's a special introductory offer of $1,600 off for the first 150 students. If you would like to join the soil revolution, then please go to www.soilfoodweb.com today.
One quick note on the audio before we get going. There is a little shuffling sound in the beginning, but we get that worked out. Otherwise, let's get to our amazing interview with Maude-Hélène Desroches of Les Jardins de la Grelinette. Maude-Hélène Desroches, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jesse. My pleasure to be here.
And our pleasure to have you. Super excited to chat. Let's kick it off where we usually do with this podcast. Can you just kind of give us a little bit of a rundown of your farm, where you're located, how much land is under cultivation in there, and those sorts of things?
Sure. Well, most of your listeners must have heard of the farm, Les Jardins de la Grelinette. We're located in Saint-Armand in Quebec, southern Quebec. So we have a good microclimate, longer season than elsewhere in Quebec. We have 1.5 acres under cultivation. So we're doing bio-intensive organic farming. We do CSA and farmers markets and deliveries of a salad mix to local restaurants and grocery stores. And so the farm was co-founded with Jean Martin, which you probably all know. And now he's super busy on the other farm, La Ferme Quatre Temps, and I've been managing the farm on my own for the last 5 or 6 years now. The time goes by so fast, I can't keep track of how many years it's been.
That's great. And of that 1.5 acres, how much of that is under cover, under tunnels?
Tunnels. So we have two caterpillar tunnels which we move every year, and we have four small greenhouses. So they're about 25 per 100 feet. And these are not like hardcore greenhouses. They're more, we call them high tunnels. So they're permanent. It's like a greenhouse, although it's not like super high tech. And it's really nice to have those around because it's really helpful for season extension. And I like them, especially for spring. Seems like spring is coming later and later every year. And it's the markets, since there's a lot of popularity now for farmers markets, they keep to open earlier and earlier. So we need something to buffer, and the high tunnels are perfect for that. And it's just, most of them are passive heated, I don't know how to say that, solar passive. We seed carrots March 1st and transplant beets somewhere in March and just cover it up, and so no extra heating, and we can have all those great vegetables early June. So it's really helpful.
Yeah, that's great. So your season is running from about April or May until the end of October. Is that about right?
That's about right. Our first markets start early June and finish early November. And we do the salad mix a bit earlier. So somewhere in April, we'll be starting to harvest salad greens, which are really cold hardy. And it's only about once a week for harvesting that and delivery. So we really need time early spring to focus on our season, and we wouldn't like, and it would be hard to have more stuff to sell early in the season. But since the season is so short here in Canada, it's really good that we lay out the farm like really well before markets and CSA start. Otherwise, it's hard to keep up with all the implantations that transplanting and seeding. They all come like all in May, and so we need time to do that. So it's good that the farmers markets and most of the selling has not started yet at that time.
Yeah, that's great. So can you dive a little bit more into the marketing aspect? You said you were doing a CSA. Can you describe that and the size of it a little bit?
Sure. It's really nice, actually. We started, when we first started the CSA, it was, in the area here, and it was 10 baskets in that area and 15 in another town. And so it was all scattered. And at one point, we had a drop-off point in Montreal, and it's in the public park. It's really, really casual. I just open my truck, put the veggies out, and there's 100 families actually that come and get their vegetables at the same place during 2 hours, sometimes in the week. And so it's people from that area, they're happy to see each other also. So it becomes somehow of a community gathering also. So that's the way we deliver our CSA now. So it's really efficient, and it's like one big party on Wednesday afternoon. Everybody comes and get their vegetables, and I'm the way we distribute the baskets has evolved through the years. So at first we were putting up all the veggies in boxes, and we would deliver the box. And after a few years, it was so long just to put all the vegetables together. to assemble the boxes. So we do now like a bulk delivery. So we put all the same vegetables in boxes, and I align, let's say there's 13 types of vegetables in my basket this week. I will align them on just in the park, and I would write in front of each box how much of each thing everyone needs to pick. And so everyone assembles their own basket. And there's choices of what they can take. So it would be either kale or Swiss chard or either beets or carrots or something like that. And now there's a new thing that's getting popular here in Quebec, which is prepaid cards. And it's more of a open market. So it seems like farmers markets are getting more popular here just because of the flexibility it offers to customers. And it's hard. It's getting harder and harder to find the customers for CSA because farmers markets are more available now. And to keep this clientele, we're looking for a way to make it more flexible to them. And so some farms started doing that now. So it's a prepaid card using Square. And so people pay ahead and the money is put onto the card. And when people come and get their vegetables, so it's not a basket now that they come and get every week. It's more if they come to you and you just put up your stand, your booth, and people will choose whatever they want, and whatever they want will be subtracted from their card. So the farmer keeps the cards, and it seems like it's a really nice way, to satisfy customers, because if they're not there 1 week, it doesn't matter. They can choose whatever they want. So it's more of a farmer's market, but the money comes ahead, so which is really great for farmers. And so I'm looking into that. I'm thinking I'm going to switch to that method now, because I feel like for some customers it's too much of an effort, with the jobs, and we all have busy lives, to go to that park on Wednesdays and never forget it and be there, So it's a big. I find for some customers it's harder, and I'm hoping to be able to keep those.
It's funny because the cards seem to be something that's coming up more and more in conversations I'm having, where it's this. It seems to be that farmers are looking for a way to still get that early boost of income for seeds and tools like you do with the CSA, but customize baskets in an efficient way. And that seems to be kind of the best of both worlds in some ways. You're getting maybe a burst of income up front, and the customers are getting to pick and choose what they want, but the farmer's not having to do each basket or box in a different way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so you're thinking that's going to kind of replace your CSA, or just be in addition to your CSA?
Well, this will become the CSA. So it's going to be the same delivery point. Just the concept will change. When the customers will come in the park, I'll have my booth, my vegetables will be there. Maybe the same way it used to be, aligned in, or maybe I'll do more of a farmer's market booth. But since I can't deal any money in the park because I'm in a public park, I don't have a permit to sell, and so right now it's possible for me to deliver the baskets because I don't deal any money, it's just I'm offering that service of delivery. But so the city of Montreal is okay with that. It wouldn't be okay with me doing like a farmer's market pop-up and dealing with money. But since with the cards, since everything's prepaid, there's no dealing. I'm not selling anything. So it's a way, that I would be able to do that. But it would be restricted to all the people who paid before. So it's the same thing. It's like a membership, and people who subscribe to my farm and they come to get vegetables from my farm, same hours, same day as when it was like the traditional basket where I would sort of force them to take whatever I've harvested for them that day. But then they would have more choice and come whenever they want.
I definitely get the sense that that's something that customers are looking for, is a little bit more flexibility and be able to do it on their own time.
Yeah.
That's sort of the CSA stuff. Can you talk a little bit about your farmers market and how where that is and how that works? I've been to Montreal now, and I've met the traffic of Montreal. And are you all going straight into Montreal on the weekends?
No, I have on weekends. It's the farmers market in Knowlton, which is in the area where I live. So it's 40-minute drive to get to that small town, and it's a well-renowned farmers markets because the produce and product are all like good quality, and it's good vibe. So that's one of the market, and we have absolutely no traffic to get there. And it's a lot of the people who come there are people who have their cottage. So they're mostly people from the city going into their cottage over the weekend. And that's a really nice farmers market. And that farmers market has opened 13 or 14 years ago. And we were there when it started. So we're really attached to our clientele, and it's a good market, so we want to keep it. And we're doing another farmers market, which is on the south shore of Montreal. And there's been issues about that market for many years, like municipality didn't want to support it, and so it was about to be shut down last year, and an amazing group of citizens just decided to make it alive again. And they are business people, and they've lived in that community for a long time, so they really know the people, and they tried their best, to get good relations with the city people, like mayor and team, and the Chamber of Commerce as well. So it worked out wonderfully. Like it's the best market I went to so far. So it really makes a big difference who organizes the market in terms of just the details of how much they will promote it, the relationship they keep with the commerçants, stores around, just like owners of stores around the market. It's really important to feel like the market is welcomed by the vendors. It's a really good market, and I was happy to be there, when they first met, when they were first starting to put the market together. Well, putting ideas together about how to go about creating a farmer's market. So I gave a few insights, about what's important for us vendors when we go to farmers markets, and they were really receptive. So it's really a farmer, like my dream farmers market. It's good.
That's great. So one of the things that I'd like to hear a little bit more about is how you sort of got interested in agriculture, and like you said, like a lot of our listeners are going to be familiar sort of with JM's story. But I'd like to hear more about your story. Like what got you into farming and sort of and all those sorts of things.
So this is a story that dates now, because it's back to when I was in university. I was studying environmental science. So yeah, environmental studies, just like a field of study that was super interesting to me. I've always loved nature and outdoors. I grew up, in the woods, I can say, in a rural community, but more forested. And so I just love nature. So it was good for me to find that field of study. And it's not long that once you talk about environmental issues, it goes back to agriculture, like water pollution and soil loss and climate change. There's a lot to do with agriculture also. Um, so I started to take some agriculture classes to understand more like the issues. And meanwhile, there was my roommate who was sold to organic food, and I had never heard about that before. And so, yeah, it was. We just started to subscribe to a CSA in our apartment, and just as the years went by, we were about to. I met Jean Martin in school, and we were about to graduate, and it was. We had the idea to go travel and find out more about, fair trade coffee. So we went on coffee farms and tried to understand more like how it works. And the idea was to stop on organic farms on our way back up to Canada. And we stopped in New Mexico, and that's where we started to work on farms. And one of the farm where we were just working a few days a week, they lost their manager. And Jean-Martin and I said, well, we really like doing that. Maybe we had worked there for a month or two, and we just proposed to become the next farm managers. And that's how we started, and there was a nice library there, at the farm we were at. And there was the what's the title? Elliot Coleman's The New Organic Farmer. I think that's the title of his book. And we just grabbed that book and we followed the recipe, and the farm went on. We managed that farm for 2 years successfully. And we thought it would be a really good idea if we came back to Canada and did the same, which we did. So that's about how we got into agriculture. The idea to be able to contribute to our community, and it's a real way of like being tangible about problematics. Like, we want to do something about water pollution. Well, let's farm organically and let's take care of our soil, and let's educate our customers about what's good food and what we do. And I think we have great impact that way. So it was like throughout our studies, it was hard to know what we would do, about all those environmental catastrophes we heard about. And once we found that we liked doing agriculture, it was obvious that it's a really nice way to have a concrete impact. And now I'm really excited, when I read things about the how do we say United Nations, United Nations. Anyway, they produced right. They produced a list, for the urgency to act, for climate change. And I think more small scale farming is second in the big list of what needs to happen in our world if we want to see a change happen. So, it feels good when you have the recognition of the highest organizations. That's what's important to change the world.
Yeah, I love that. I think a lot about, I feel like anybody who's really passionate about what they're doing or really curious, and I don't know if I can articulate this well enough, but will end up caring more about farms, because so much of what we use as consumers, from our clothing to the food we eat to everything, it comes out of the soil. So it's cool to think about farming as sort of a response to the things that concern us, or the things that that we consume.
It's at the base of our system, base of our living.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, you all, just jumping in here real quick to say that if you are in the Southern California area, or if you're just down for a trip there in the winter, don't forget to check out our event this upcoming February at no-tillgrowers.com/events with Jared Smith of Jared's Real Food and Stephen Cornett of Nature's Always Right. It's gonna be a lot of no-till nerdiness, from large-scale lasagna gardening techniques to K&F, and I'll also be doing a presentation there on designing your own no-till systems based on what you have available to you. So check that out. There are discounts, as always, to Patreon members. All right, back to Maude-Hélène.
One thing that I think is really special about your farm, when Hannah and I came to visit you all back in October, I think, one of the things that really stood out is how much your farm is sort of dedicated to being quite a bit of a homestead, and it feels very comfortable there. And can you talk a little bit about how you all set up your farm to also be a little bit of a homestead?
Well, it's just the natural way, because we live where we farm, and I spent all of my life here. So it's just, also visiting some farms in the past. I remember, visiting farms where older farms, and there's really a spirit where it's a place where it's good to be, and there's those small paths in the wood that lead to the place where interns live. And so we had seen that before, and I think it's also things that we see that influences that we want to reproduce at home. So there's a lot of that for sure. That inspired us to create the farm as we created it, but also just the love of being surrounded by nature. We are also surrounded by industrial agriculture, so we want to create as much of a bubble, of a vibrant, biodiverse bubble around our farm. So, planting shrubs and trees and fruit trees and flower patches, and so that's also what's creating the homestead, because there's a lot of things to do around, just like taking care of all that, and also I'm super excited about all the fruits that mature, that all those fruits are just for the family, or we don't sell them. But it's many things at once. It's wanting to be surrounded by birds and insects, and wanting to just create that beautiful, lush feeling also, and wanting to contrast as well with bare soil that's around us, cornfield or across the street and vineyard on the other side. And so just making a little patch of life where birds can come and rest and have fun. There's a lot of that too. And when we started, it was also just a hay field around the barn, because what we bought was a barn at first. We needed to get a permit to construct our house on the site, in the barn. And so it was bare. It was just like no trees and nothing growing. And it was harsh to stay here when we had a day off, because it was just like the sun would just burn us, and it was hot and not beautiful. And, that's where we live. So it's just a natural tendency to make things pretty around you, That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Do I answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so interesting because it's your farm really is kind of in this. You have like a big vineyard on one side. I don't remember what's on the other side. Maybe a hay field or something.
Yeah.
But when you're in the farm, you feel like you're completely separate from all of that. But one question I would have is, do you have issues with having conventional neighbors? Are there drift issues? Is there anything that happens in that way?
Yeah, well, like I tried to find a glass bubble that we could pull over the farm and just like be safe, but there would need to be like filters on the ground also to filter the groundwater. Just, pollution is all over. It's really hard. It's really hard to be cut from that, and it's everywhere. So for sure there are issues, but in terms of drafting, we planted nice. I don't know, I don't know how to say. There's shrubs just on the sides of our property all over to protect us from pollution, pesticide drift. And every time I hear the sprayers on each side, I have this feeling of like insecurity that grows, and it's there, like for sure. But like we've never had, let's say, drifts that would kill or vegetables, or because we have we have more than the zone that's allowed for organic production. It's not very much actually. They ask, I think, for 20 feet from your conventional neighbor, and we have probably 40 feet. So, but there's shrubs, and we let the grass grow high on their side. But I really dream of the day where we don't need to protect ourselves, from our neighbors, but they take care of protecting us from their practice. I don't understand why it's us that need to keep the 20 feet on our side, and they can pollute all the way to the line, of their property. I think this is so unfair, and it's really not the precautionary principle, It's just like, it's really far from that. And anyways, every day I dream of humans that get more conscious, and that's part of it, and there's many issues, but using pesticides is one of them. It's really nonsense.
Yeah, and those buffers that you have, they are pretty tall. Like I said, it definitely feels like you're completely separated from everything else when you're at your farm. And one thing you mentioned that I think is really interesting is the pathway back to the intern cabins. And it seems as though you've put a lot of energy into those cabins. They're these beautiful little A-frames. And then you've got a nice little communal eating area. Can you talk a little bit about just about how you all set that up and the energy that you've put into your interns and employees being able to live there?
That's a nice observation you made, and thank you for bringing that up. I think, well, also, like from experience we had, being in beautiful spaces influence a lot who we are. And so it's really important for us when we welcome people to our farm that they are well treated. And our farm is really based on the exchange. We give a lot and we hope to receive a lot. People work hard when they come here, and we want them to have a good time and to feel like they are just well where they are. And I think it's no big advanced science that it's proven now, that people, when they're well on their work area, they will just be more relaxed, and and be able to really give out like of what they are and their energy, you know. So it's really based on the exchange. And also, you know, the forest is a place I really like to go. So I like to make pretty things in the forest also. So I wouldn't like to have like ugly shacks and trash all around in the forest, you know. So the small paths also are made to make sure that people walk on the paths and they don't walk on beautiful plants that grow in the forest. So all of that spirit also for interns to live in the woods also helps them, I think, appreciating the beauty of nature. And it's in that spirit that we built that.
Yeah, and it's great. It feels like a little village back there. Can you talk about how your intern and employee system works? Do all of the employees live on the property? And do interns automatically live on the property? How does that work?
Well, they don't have to, but we offer the service. If they want to live on the farm, they can. And most of the time they want to, because it's fun to just live in the woods is fantastic. And to be on the farm is a really good way to understand what's the farm life for real. Like, and for a lot of the people who come and work, you know, they are on their way to really find out if it's like for sure what they want to do in life. So it's good to live on the farm, because once those people will have their own, they'll probably live on the farm too. And it's a good way to understand, you know, like that there are watering to do in the weekends and some harvests, and for them also to understand like what is it to raise a family on the farm. So it's a good immersion for them, and so we're happy to provide the opportunity to them to live on the farm. So some employees will be more comfortable, you know, to rent an apartment close by, and so we're really open about like whatever people choose to do, but there's a lot of people that live here every summer. You know, we usually have 3 employees and 1 or 2 intern that are here for 5 to 6 weeks. So there's a lot of people. So it's not rare that there's like 3 to 5 people living in the woods during the summer, and it's fun.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's good for you all too, having that little bit of, you know, having young people to socialize with and teach. I mean, that's got to be exciting on your end as well.
Yeah, and it's really good that they have their own space, because that's important for us, you know, to be able to have some family time. And it's really good for them to feel like they are at home and they are not in our home. You know, they can really feel like they go to their own rhythm. You know, they cook together at night in their own space, and they can do bonfires and all, you know, and if we want to, we can join the party whenever we feel like it.
That's great. You know, speaking of having a little family time, this is a question I feel, and a topic that I feel like I don't give enough attention to on the podcast. And it's, how did you all manage when you're building the farm? How did you all manage with 2 young kids? Like, what did you do to sort of manage your time and all of those sorts of things?
Well, with our first baby, it was, you know, we were really starting the farm. So we were on another property, living in a teepee, just like opening the fields, and we were really new at it. So it was quite of like intense experience, and we knew we needed to stop at 5 to take care of our baby and just be there present. And so And we always knew that we needed to take Sunday off, so that, that's something that we never made any compromise about that. So we always had a big day off. And so we learned that was a good way to recuperate also and be more productive. And it was a good time, just like real time for going to the beach with our son and being able to spend some family time. But it was definitely not easy. The first year I would farm with my baby on my back, and it was really hard. Just not sleeping much and working too hard. So when the second baby came 5 years later, we were more mature and we had gone through like the hard stuff, and we thought we would want to do it again the same way we did it. So the really nice formula that we found was I would stay with the baby in the morning and just do some house chores and spend time, just good time with the baby. And Jean-Martin would be out in the field with the team, and at noon, at lunchtime, we would exchange roles. I would go in the field and Jean-Martin would stay with the baby. And at that time, our older son would go to daycare or school, even. He was 5 by then. And so we managed it that way, and energy-wise, it was really good. For me to remain active on the farm and super involved was really important, because I really love that work, that part of my life. And it's really good to, when you're with your kids, to really be with the kids, and when you work, to really work, and try to do both at once is just really frustrating for like everything. And I think it's just like a sense of appreciating, like as we grow older, I hope that this feeling can be in younger farmers, that you don't need to grow older necessarily, but just realizing this chance we have to live what we live and to have beautiful kids, to be present, this presence, this awareness of being present just changes the whole thing. It changes like the intensity of love that you give. And so this awareness is, I have it more now. So it's easier for me to just appreciate more my kids and be able to, when I'm with them, I'm really with them. And when I'm at work, I'm at work. And yet being at home, farming, makes it possible for me, when it's 3 and the kids get off the bus, I'm there with them and I'm present. And it's, the importance of having a good team also, that I farm well, that I can just like let out in the field on their own and be with my kids when I need to, so it's evolved. I haven't always known how to be a good parent, because we're not born being parents. So it's something that we learn. You probably know also after your 3rd kid how to be a better parent.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's some important details, I think, that especially about being present, because I think that that's one thing that I know I don't do a good job of, because I feel like I'm constantly working, but I've noticed that when I separate, when I work and then I stop and I spend time with my family and not work, that the whole experience is that much richer.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Hey, you all, last interruption from me. If you appreciate the work we do here with the podcast or at no-tillgrowers.com or with the YouTube channel, where we have been putting up loads of cool free videos with several really amazing growers, please consider kicking in a few bucks over at patreon.com/farmerjesse. That money goes towards keeping this thing going. It allows me to pay some folks to help me, which is huge for me, because I am probably not unlike many of you, a full-time farmer, and also just trying to figure all this no-till stuff out. So that Patreon page really just allows me to do this and everything else we do. So Anyway, there are discounts on events and merch, which we now have. You should go check that out, no-tillgrowers.com. And at a certain level, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs this week to Dawson Mahalko, J.M. Fortier, Tiffany Jackson, Weaver Akers, and Jeffrey Hayes. Thank you to everyone who supports this show. Truly, back to Maude-Hélène.
I want to kind of move in a different direction and talk a little bit about your soil practices a little bit. Is there anything that you're doing now that wasn't sort of included in the Market Gardener book, or is maybe new, or has anything changed?
Like overall, it's pretty much the same techniques that we use since the beginning, you know, but things evolve a little bit in the sense where, you know, at first we sometimes would use the rototiller, and I think I sold the rototiller like 6 years ago because we were not using it anymore, you know. So just this intention of wanting to take care of the soil more and just not shake the layers all the time, and just seeing all those earthworms being killed after like rototilling was really sad to me. So I just wanted to cut down on killing those precious animals. So one year, I think the first year that Jean-Martin left the farm, I was not yet like super familiar with the BCS, and I surely was not familiar with like teaching my employees using it. So we wouldn't use the BCS very often, like the rotary harrow is what we use and what we had, but we didn't use it so much. And we spent the first year, you know, just like tarping whenever there was weeds or old crops on the bed, we would put the black tarp, and when it was time to open it, we would just like prep the soil with the wheel hoe, and it was a bit longer, but it worked fine, and it was fun to me to just realize that we don't need a BCS, but it's much more efficient to use a BCS because it goes faster. But so yeah, that first year was mostly manual work on the 1.5 acres, and it worked fine. And now I will use the rotary harrow more and more, but like the shallowest I will, you know. So if we need to plant garlic and we need to plant it deep, I will rotary harrow deep, but it's not what I prefer. You know, I really put a stress on doing it the most shallow possible, you know, to prepare the soil. We do a lot of the occultation, so black tarps are used every time a crop is finished, and we have at least like 2 weeks before the next crop we will put the tarps, and they are a really important aspect of our farm because it's really that way that we manage weeds also. You know how a bed can be really dirty after a crop, and it's really a good relief to just put the tarp on. It's like putting the lid on something that smells bad. It doesn't smell anymore, and you just put the tarp, and 2 weeks later you open, and you know everything's clean and it's been digested by the active soil. So that's really satisfying to use. So that for sure is used more and more. What else? Like green manures, you know, whenever we have time, even though it doesn't have time to get mature, I will plant green manures just to have stuff growing, like roots growing in the soil for keeping the microorganism alive. So I really put an accent on that. And I don't know what's changed so much, just like maybe just like small details, you know, and It's curious, to be on my own, to manage the farm has allowed me to really put my head around everything that goes on. So I feel I have a stronger understanding of the whole farm. And so I put more importance on details. Since we can't grow any bigger now, it's 1.5 acres. I just keep doing things better and less mistakes every year, and like just fine tuning, fertility, and the soil is really good soil here, and I find that it's really rewarding to take care of it because it gives really great results. Every year our revenues, they go up, and it seems like it's endless. Our revenues, they just have been going up every year since we started, and it wouldn't be so, if the soil was being degraded. So I feel we're doing a good work on that sense. It's like the indicator, since we make more money, it must mean something. It must mean that we do something right. What's changed? Maybe another detail. I don't know if that's well talked about in the book, is the ramiel wood, the ramiel chip wood.
The ramiel wood chips.
Yeah.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that.
So we're lucky enough to have a really good business here in Quebec, and they grow willow just to do the wood chips, the ramiel wood chips, and so I put that in every other garden, where I don't grow my small salad mix. You don't want wood chips when you grow salad mix. So I will put those wood chips in all the blocks where I have my heavy feeders, like tomatoes and onions, and I'm hoping with that, to bring some my mycorrhizal mushroom family in the gardens, and it's beautiful to watch all the small animals that live underneath the wood chips. So in the aisles, when you open it up, you see all the animals, the diversity there, and mushrooms grow and all. And so by the first season, it's starting to degrade, and the second year, the good chance will be that I'll need to heal the beds with the rotary plow. So the wood chips will be mostly degraded by then, and all that life will be on top of my beds. So it's the way I work it out, So I'm just excited to buy ramiel wood chips every year to add it up to my field, and I think it's a good way to fertilize through carbon also, which is something that excites me. I've tried it a couple years, to like put more organic matter in the fields, like straw, and hoping I would need to add less like chicken manure or more the nitrogen. But it's a really tricky flip, and I didn't get there yet. It's still part of my dreams, to be able to be more independent of those of the nitrogen that comes from far away, or not necessarily from beautiful organic agriculture, because chicken manure is more of or any fertilizer, is often related to a industrial business. So yeah, that's another big topic, fertility.
Yeah, no, I love that you have a person there, or a company there, that actually just makes ramiel wood chips.
Yeah, it's nice.
And then you also have good access to compost, right? Like, you all have a pretty good compost supplier.
That's harder. That's a hard one. That's a hard topic. No, we don't have a good access to compost. We access compost, but it comes from far away. And yeah, I'm dreaming of the day where there's a lot of companies that just are created that do compost, because there's a lot of need for good compost. And since we have such a little land here, there's no way, we don't have space and we don't have the machinery to do compost. So right now, either we like have it shipped from Ontario or somewhere even further up in Quebec. And so that's a harder topic, like accessing compost. It's feasible, but it's hard and it's costly because it comes from far away.
Yeah. I feel like that is an enormous issue that really needs to be tackled throughout North America, and throughout the world, really. When I speak with other people in other countries, access to compost seems to be chief among the challenges for starting a sort of biointensive farm.
Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, how, like in a optimal magical world, how would it work? Because it just keeps, I always keep thinking that in the end, there's no other solution than having the animals on the site, because even a really nice organic farm, organic chicken farm, or organic beef, they will be pasture fed, and their manure will fall directly on the fields, where it will fertilize the fields where, the farmers needs to grow food for their animals. So he needs that manure. I don't know, it's hard to have like also an animal that's grazing freely to collect the manure. So there's an issue also about, like, we have access now to a lot of manure because all the cattle is in the same place, and it's really easy to scoop it up, but in a world where there's more of organic, free range chicken and all, it's harder to find more manure and create good compost. So I don't have the answers to that.
Yeah, and that is an interesting part of it, is that compost, generally speaking, comes from the waste of a poor system. And
yeah,
you think about, like, I don't know, horses that live in stables that are just shoveled out every day, and then that manure gets turned into compost. But those horses often have to have dewormers, and sometimes it's people raking off the leaves of their yards, and then that goes to the composter, and that's pretty good. But then the tree's not getting its own fertilization.
Yeah, that's it.
So it's interesting.
Yeah, it's hard to have a complete system, like to have just a whole organic vegetable system, like where does because we export so many vegetables, they go out of the farm, so nutrients go out. How do we bring it in? It's a really big topic, actually. And it's the one that makes me a bit uncomfortable as well. If I push the reflection, and since I don't have the answers, it's a bit hard to put your head around, like how to fertilize a farm nicely with rich systems that come from rich systems, as you say, compared to poor systems.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's something that I'm often sort of challenging myself to, almost forcing myself to think about it, because, on the one hand, you could say, like, green manures is a great answer, right? Seeds. But then the seeds are often coming from other countries. They're grown in ways that are often conventional, or at least like large, giant tillage systems. It's not, there is that sort of like blind pollution that's behind the things that we utilize. So figuring out, once we can sort of snap that into place, I think that creates a totally different form of agriculture.
Yeah, I don't know how we can keep, doing our things so, like, intensively, like with a system that would be more holistic, like a fertilization that would be more in tune. because a lot of what we use also, like for greenhouse fertilization, comes from mines also. There's like potash, potassium is mined. So anyways, I don't know if we need to get into those hard topics, because it's just really depressing.
No, but I mean, I'm glad we broached it, though, because it's something that I think we like to tiptoe around or ignore, and I think it is important to bring it up sometimes and just say, yeah, some of these amendments that we're using come from mines, and they may not even be fair trade mines. And yeah, I mean, there's definitely all of that stuff. If we ignore it, then we're no better than the systems we're trying to get away from.
Yeah, that's right. So let's focus on, or let's put our creative energy on like finding the good answers, the good solutions.
Absolutely.
To make our fertility more resilient or more local.
Yeah, I completely agree. I want to talk just for a second a little bit about starting your farm and how you all were able to, or what you all would recommend for capitalizing a farm. Like, what did you, in the beginning, were you able to find capital fairly easy? I know that JM told me that Quebec has some pretty good resources that other places may not. But how were you able to fund your farm starting out?
Well, for sure, that fund that's accessible in Quebec is really good. It's like a subsidy to, when you have some studies, you can access like up to $40,000. Like that's the max. If you did really like the studies in agriculture, you can access up to 40,000. So JM and I each had 20,000, and it was really, really good help, for greenhouse and BCS. And other than that, it was also, we needed to build our house, and there's a lot of expenses that come with like starting a farm. There's also like the living, where we're going to live and all. So it was not easy. We accessed some, do we say subventions, subsidies, or like grants? Grants,
yeah.
Grants from some organizations, so local development agencies in the area helped us some and gave us some loans with low interest. So there was some of that. And there was a lot of, I wouldn't recommend it, but JM was really good at, getting a credit card and getting another credit card to pay the first credit card and getting a third credit card to pay the second and the first. And so, like, meanwhile, like, we succeeded at that, with credit, just to build our house on credit cards, which is pretty clever. But like stressful and not ideal. But, the idea of having a big pool of customers that pay ahead is so helpful, to start to have money to be able to kickstart the season. And so that was also part of it. And we had some savings also from farming or 2 seasons farming on the other in New Mexico. So some money that was put aside. And I guess, I would encourage people to do some, to ask for personal loans, if the parents can help, if some good friends can help. There's many ways, to find, the idea is not to put all your eggs in the same baskets also. So, and we really were advocates of starting small, since we were young and had barely no money. We started like super small and built, every year we would make some investments as our means would increase. And yeah, it was really important to me to just like be really wise about the investments we would do, just because money was so rare. And I really like this idea of starting small also, because you can get comfortable with what you do and find the customers as your production rise. Like, it's really hard when you start with a big production, not having your clientele established yet. So starting small is a good part of the answer. Having really low expenses, keeping the expenses as low as possible. And even, our lifestyle was like super not expensive. Like, and living simply is a good part of the success also. So when you need less, you need less money. It's just that way.
That's great. Well, Maude-Hélène, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciated this conversation.
Well, thank you, Jesse. It was fun talking with you. Thank you for bringing up some good questions. Fun to answer.
All right, if you enjoyed that episode, make sure to follow Maude-Hélène on Facebook and Instagram, and check out The Market Gardener, of course, great book, to read more about the work there at Grelinette. Also, subscribe to this podcast wherever you're getting it, and check out that event in San Diego, no-tillgrowers.com/events. Also, check out the merch there and support the show with some swag. That's always good. Big thank you to Jackson Roulette and Josh Satin for all their help. Big thank you to my wife Hannah for all of her help and support. Thank you to all of our patrons. Otherwise, thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Fantastic. Yeah, Jean-Martin is just publishing a book, and so he's on every radio station right now, even on TV. So he's busy promoting the book right now. So that's fun. We get to talk about his interviews at night, and so it's good time.
Yeah, it's funny. When I was up there, he said he was working on a book, but he didn't tell me he was about to publish one. So I was a little surprised when I saw that come up. I was like, oh, how does he just neglect to tell me that? But that's great. That's super exciting.